All right, great. I think now is a good time to jump on. So thanks everyone for joining today. This is the seventh installment, I believe, in our webinar series. And I'm really excited to have as my guest today, Shelly Wilkes. She's the Executive Vice President of Marketing and Social Responsibility for the Orlando Magic. And as we're kind of in the full throngs of the NBA season, we thought this is a very topical conversation to have, especially now that we're in the NBA Cup and all these new things that are happening from a branding standpoint, the NBA. And so just a really quick introduction of myself. My name is Ross Chesnick. I'm the CEO of Listo. And I want to hand the reins over to you, Shelly, on today's topic, which is really focusing on how Orlando, the Magic, have built a international brand and how, Shelly, you have been involved in those efforts over your career that's spanning, I believe, about 20 years,
Yeah.
the Orlando Magic organization. So without further ado, Shelly, take it away.
Great. Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'll give you a little bit of background of my career with the Orlando Magic, and then we can kind of jump into more of our international growth efforts. So I've been with the Orlando Magic, as Ross mentioned, for a little over 20 years. I went to the University of Central Florida and played volleyball there. And honestly didn't know what to do with my life after being a college athlete. And so the best answer there is to just keep going to school. And so I got my master's degree from UCF's Sport Business Management program, which was actually founded by the DeVos family, who are also the owners of the Orlando Magic. And so that's really how I started with the team. Through that relationship with the graduate program, I started working on multiple projects while in school, and then actually worked game nights for the Orlando Magic in our live entertainment, what we call it today, our live entertainment department. And at that point, I was like, somebody gets to do this for their job, like come up with fun contests and have fans on the court. And yes, that is game entertainment. And so we, through that relationship, all those projects was brought on full time in 2004 in our ticket sales department. And from there, really kind of just went throughout the organization, really wanted to be on that marketing game entertainment side, which is where I started my career, and was fortunate enough for some changes to happen. Somebody kind of moved on into another role. And then I jumped over in 2006 into the marketing area of the business. So in general, kind of grew up doing live entertainment, game production, creative development. That was kind of my wheelhouse for about 10 years, and really grew in that area and had a lot of fun opportunities, from opening the new Kia Center, which was the Amway Center when we opened it. So did a lot of groundbreaking events, a lot of fun stuff around building that building and how we were going to monetize our current arena. And then towards the end of kind of my tenure in that particular space, had kind of an opportunity to do what we're going to talk about today, produced games for the Orlando Magic when we played in Brazil. We played Flamengo down in Brazil, and so got to go produce a game in Brazil, and then got to be a part of the NBA Global Games and produce a game in London as well. And so it's kind of my first foray into the international markets. And then also that year produced the NBA All-Star Game alongside the NBA in Toronto. So had a lot of really fun game entertainment production opportunities that kind of final year in that role that I was in. In 2016, actually transitioned to the team president of the Lakeland Magic, which is now called the Osceola Magic. It's the NBA G League team that the Orlando Magic started in 2016. Was 8.5 months pregnant when I took that role. And so a fun journey there for a few years, and then returned to the Orlando Magic in my current role in July of 2020, amidst a pandemic, relaunching a season, and going through the bubble season, et cetera. A lot of fun there. And now we're kind of into a new era of how everyone is operating post-pandemic and how we operate as a team. And so that's really been my journey. And today, my role really oversees all of our marketing strategy, our brand strategy, all of our content, live entertainment, social media, all of our community outreach. So we have a couple arms of how we reach the community, both on the ground efforts and through the Orlando Magic Youth Foundation, which is our nonprofit 501c3. And then also oversee all of the events that our team produces. So we produce a ton of internal and external events that we have an events and engagement team that does a lot of those efforts. So that's kind of the scope. I kind of look at it like the external brand of the Orlando Magic is really where my focus is, and have a fantastic team, obviously, that leads a lot of those efforts.
Right, thanks so much for sharing that, Shelly. And when we were talking, kind of preparing for this webinar, you had kind of mentioned these like key moments that were in your career, but also what happened with the NBA as they started expanding out and looking towards international markets. So what would you say are those like milestone moments that you had that's like, okay, this is what truly prepared me for this much more externally facing role that I have today?
Yeah, I really do think it was some of the efforts leading up to opening the Amway Center. So when we started that, I just saw that Phil Hastings is on the call, which is so exciting. I know that he created this introduction. He was part of some of those early efforts of opening a new building. And to do that, we had a lot of conversations with the city of Orlando, a lot of government conversations, right? A lot of how do we work with these key constituents, these high level leaders, to make sure that we're representing our brand well, but also it was a partnership with the city of Orlando and Orange County here in Florida. And those conversations really prepared me with some of these other opportunities. And then going into those international markets, so having the opportunity to work alongside the NBA in a lot of cases, I worked multiple NBA All-Star games with the NBA, worked with them on global games. And so some of those opportunities really prepared me for this next leap in my career. And then starting a brand new team in a very small market in the minor league of the NBA, it prepares you for a lot. You wear a lot of different hats. Had to be the face. I presented to probably every single Rotary club, every high school, every board you could think of in that market, just to get people interested in having an understanding of what is the G League? Why do we call it the G League? Why should we come and watch your games? So had a lot of opportunities there. And then thankfully had spent a lot of time with the Orlando Magic for, at that point, about 15 years, and was able to build a ton of relationships and a lot of equity and trust in me. And so coming back into this role, have taken on some additional projects and opportunities to continue to grow the brand. And so, you know, one part of my job that I still am shocked is part of my job is getting to work with Nike and the NBA to design uniforms and what do our courts look like? And, you know, that's a 3 to 4 year process to get ahead of. And so that has been quite eye-opening of how long this takes, but also the process of working with Nike to really develop these cool uniforms that we launch every year. And so a lot of great opportunities, a lot of doors have been opened, and really a lot of trust from our leadership and my team to be able to step into this role.
That's fascinating. I was just thinking about the NBA Cups court, like the full
Yes, that was a fun
immersive color
process.
contrast. Yeah, were you involved in that?
Yeah, so the NBA Cup really, to be honest, came a little bit out of the blue for a lot of the teams. I think the NBA had been working on it for some time and really trying to find a way to generate early season interest in the NBA and create another media opportunity. I mean, as you all are aware in sports, a lot of the rights deals is what has the big dollars behind it. So wanted to find a platform that there would be an opportunity for a future partner and a future broadcast partner to come on board.
Yeah.
So the NBA Cup came with really quickly, and then wanted to find ways to make those cup nights stand out. So cup nights are a regular season game, but they also count towards this other tournament that's happening. And so one of the ways to make it stand out was to create these very funky courts that last year was a bit shocking for people as they turned on their TVs. The NBA has been quite traditional in wood-based courts. And so having a fully painted court is something different. And then they wanted to create consistency. So every design was very similar. This past year, they worked with an artist and designed a similar like concentric circle starting point, and then every team had the ability to pick a background pattern that really fit their brand. And so that's where we pick stars, makes sense for us. And then we all wear statement edition uniforms. So the NBA has 3 core uniforms. Association and icon are kind of your core. statement are your little bit more funky uniforms. And so those are the uniforms that we wore as part of the NBA Cup. We unfortunately lost in a quarterfinals game last night. So we are out of the NBA Cup, and we'll see kind of who is the champion this year. The Lakers ended up winning it for the first time last year. They're not in it this year, so we'll see. The NBA Cup is up for grabs.
Awesome. Yeah, it really is a good way to create mid-season buzz. I know that was a sticking point for the NBA for a while. And so kind of bringing this back to the theme of the webinar on creating that international brand, one of the things that we talked about previously also was kind of like the involvement of the NBA in this. So like talk about kind of like that pivotal moment where you're like, okay, the Magic are in an international market. Miami is not that far away. Florida is an incredibly diverse state. So you kind of had
Yeah.
a jump start on it, but what was it like having those conversations about building an international presence, and kind of what were your goals associated with that?
Yeah, for sure. So really, I would say the NBA led the process here, right? We had the opportunity to grow globally, really started in the 80s and then more so kicked off with the Dream Team in 92, right? We had this huge global appeal as the NBA. And so the NBA really led the charge in starting to grow internationally. We're now broadcast in something like 200 countries, lots of languages. You can watch the NBA via League Pass pretty much anywhere. And so the league really led those efforts. In Orlando, we're very fortunate that we were able to grow an international fan base purely by the visitors coming into Central Florida. We have 79 million visitors every single year that come to Central Florida, mostly for Disney and Universal. And so about 20 years ago, we stood up what we call our tourism sales department. And so this group really works on partnerships with tour operators in key visit markets. So mostly we work with South America, key market being Brazil. We work out of the UK. We have a lot of tour operators there today. And now we're expanding even further outside of those countries. And so those relationships with those tour operators are key because a lot of people internationally book their travel months in advance. They use tour operators to plan their trips and to have those relationships. They're like, yeah, you're going to Disney, but you're in market for 8 days. There's an Orlando Magic game. Why don't you go to an NBA game live? So those are super helpful. And then the other key relationships we've established are in the tourism corridor. So if anybody's been to Orlando, International Drive, down by Disney, there's a ton of hotels. And so we have created a lot of relationships with all those concierge desks and secondary market ticket sellers that sell the Disney experiences or Universal experiences. And they also sell Orlando Magic game tickets. And so we're able to really reach that tourism market on a lot of different levels. And because of that, we grew a significant fan base, specifically in Brazil. And in the UK. So those are kind of our two largest tourist markets where they've come in and we see those fan bases grow. Then the really pivotal moment was about 3 years ago, maybe 4 now. The NBA opened up the opportunity, what we call around here ITMP, which is International Team Marketing Partnerships. So prior to this being opened up, you could not have a global partner or a sponsorship deal with anyone internationally. Those were NBA rights only. Teams did not have the right to sell those sponsorships. That right has now been opened up. There are lots of rules around it. For anybody that's worked with the NBA, a lot of rules, but certainly opportunity. And so we are now pretty heavily focused on key markets to go into to grow those opportunities for sponsorship dollars. And it's a multi-pronged approach to even make this happen. And we're really working diligently on figuring it out. We don't have an international marketing department. We have a committee of a few different people over a few different departments, mostly sales and marketing. There's about 5 of us that work on this, ancillary to our day jobs. And so trying to lift sponsorship opportunities through fan base growth. And so we're focused heavily on Germany, is kind of the market that we want to grow the quickest because we think we have a fairly short window to do so. We have 3 German players. We're a team that has the most German players in the NBA with Franz Wagner, Mo Wagner, and Tristan da Silva. And Franz just signed a long-term contract with us, so he'll be here for at least 5 more years. Mo and Tristan will kind of see what happens with their contracts, but we have now the opportunity to go after this very specific market who is already following us because we have players from there. So we're heavily focused on Germany. The other market we're heavily focused on is Brazil. Obviously, we already had a fan base, again, growing there because of our tourism market and them coming to Magic games. So we're really like the adopted NBA team there. And then the other market we're focused on is Puerto Rico, which you wouldn't consider international, but it is marked as an international territory. There's about 30% of our market is made up of Hispanic fan base. And I would say of those 30%, self-identifying Hispanics within our market, there's probably about 70% are Puerto Rican. And so we really focus heavily on the Puerto Rico market for multiple reasons. One, the proximity, two, a lot of great partnership opportunities from a commercialization standpoint, businesses that do business both in Puerto Rico and in Orlando. So a lot of opportunities in Puerto Rico. So diving deep on those three, I know I went into a lot of detail there for inflection points, but that's kind of how it all happened. You know, we went from a tourism fan base, globalization of the NBA, and them really doing the work to grow NBA basketball globally. And now it's up to us to grow the Orlando Magic brand internationally, really in those key markets.
And one of the things that's come up a lot of times in these webinars is how you really need to cater to your fan base. Like you can't have a Los Angeles experience in Edmonton or in Cleveland. Like they have unique demographic characteristics. And so when you're trying to establish an international brand, Brazil is not like Germany, which is not like the UK.
Right.
So were there any like kind of like fascinating moments when you're like, okay, this is what we have to do to market to the Brazilian market versus the German market? Like, were there any like nuggets that are worth sharing?
Well, I mean, first and foremost is language. So I think that we have a huge social following from a content perspective on our just organic channels that we have here in the States. But we know that there is a respect level and a higher likelihood of fandom if we are speaking to people within their language. So in order to do that, we are not well-versed in Portuguese or well-versed in German as a team. So we needed to go find partners who are. So that's really the first thing we did. We stood up social media language accounts in Brazil with a partner there called Samba. We feed them a ton of content. They then take that content, make it culturally relevant. They caption it, they change language if needed, etc. And they're really speaking to the Brazilian audience. They are there on the ground. They understand that audience much better than we do. They then send us ideas. Can you get XYZ content with the players that would be more relevant for our audience? So we will do some of that stuff. The other great thing that's happened with Brazil has a ton of sports influencers, fashion influencers, etc. A lot of popularity in the influencer space. A lot of those people travel to Orlando and they have some of those relationships. And so then we will bring them to a game. We'll build a whole game experience around that person. And then they are posting on their own channels back in Brazil, right? So there's a lot of circular opportunity there with just growing the fan base and being more authentic to that particular market. We then stood up Spanish language channels because we are quite popular in a lot of Spanish speaking countries. Again, Mexico City being one area where we're pretty popular, and then other South American countries. And so we have now established a Spanish language channel specifically for international growth, but also, again, as I mentioned, 30% of our fan base is Hispanic. So we wanted to have a Spanish language channel. Though many people speak English, they still respect being spoken to in their native language. And then the last one we've most recently in November just set up were German language channels, again, with an agency in Germany that understands the language, understands what would be interesting to that fan base and those particular and potential followers and potential fans. And so they really started pushing a lot of that content. Those channels have grown pretty significantly over the past month. And we're about to launch some additional paid media to grow the follower base in Germany. Again, as I mentioned, that's the place we're trying to get the deepest, the quickest. And so as much effort as we can put behind growing followers is really where we're at, because the more followers we gain, the more opportunity there is to monetize that. and find commercial opportunities in those markets.
And one thing that comes to mind is when, and this might be a little bit out of your purview, but when you're recruiting players for your teams, do recruits work with you to see if there's also, in addition to a talent fit, a market fit if they're trying to build an international brand? Like
I would say if we would have wrote the story for this year's draft and picked Tristan da Silva, who is his German and Brazilian, that's who we would have picked from a marketing and sales
yeah,
perspective. We did not. We don't have a say in any of this. So
yeah,
unfortunately, no, the basketball side purely makes talent decisions
yes, yes,
and does not really take into account what we think we need on the business side. Luckily for us, this has all worked out and is a very positive. But no, I mean, I do think that players in free agency look at the culture, right? They look more at the culture of the team and what they can come in and expect. And they look at us as a brand, right? Is that a brand that I want to be a part of? And so from that standpoint, maybe, but in
yeah.
general, totally separate. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of say in who's on our team.
That probably makes the most sense. But I'm always curious just because like if there's like serendipity of like, oh, this team has, like
Yeah,
different markets in corners of the world. Maybe there was a decision that was, integrated with marketing. But
I
anyway,
think it is integrated. If you think about like the Lakers in New York, there's certainly players who are going to pick those larger markets
yeah.
because of media opportunities or endorsement opportunities. I'm sure that weighs into those decisions, but
Yeah.
that's not something that we really
Yeah.
have a say in.
And then you were talking about different channels and using different agencies to work with to really get the word out about the Magic in different demographics. So domestically versus internationally, what have you seen be kind of the best channels for distribution when it comes to content and social media and advertising? Is it TikTok? Is it Instagram? Like what
Yeah.
kind of found a sweet spot with that domestically versus internationally?
Yeah, I would say it's honestly similar with both. YouTube has become a huge focus of ours. That's really to grow that international fan base. We have a little bit more rules as it relates to our television rights and broadcast rights that we have to pay attention to domestically. Globally, though, YouTube is kind of like the crown jewel. That's where people are finding our stories. That's where they're watching highlights.
Mhm.
It's where they're watching for the most minutes. And we're really seeing that stat is domestic and international, that we will just stitch together 2 hours of highlights and people just let it run. Whether or not they're watching it, I'm not sure, but they will let it run. And so we're seeing minutes watched is highest in YouTube. It's also the highest growth we're getting out of Brazil right now because we've grown so much in that market. We are seeing a ton of growth in Brazil, specifically on YouTube. I would say the other one is Instagram for the areas that we are focused on. So we're, again, mostly focused in growing Brazil and Germany. Both of those accounts are growing pretty significantly. TikTok is still a bit of a conundrum. Grows extremely fast, great engagement. From a monetization and marketing standpoint, a little bit more challenging. I don't know that we're there yet on figuring out the right messaging to use really to monetize. It's a great place for us to grow fans and a great place for us to engage people. We have our younger social media staff on the TikTok account. Wouldn't say that I'm a TikTok user. And so when I see stuff, I'm like, this is strange. But it takes off and people love TikTok, but our main focuses are really Instagram and YouTube. We are active on all channels, but those two are really where we're finding the most opportunity to grow and engage. And it's really the tools that they provide, right? You have Instagram collaborations really changed the game. It really helped us reach new audiences. It helped us do a better job of engaging smaller accounts or larger accounts. For instance, in Germany, we're doing a watch party at the end of the month in Germany for a game on December 29th. And we're partnering with a local German-based shoe store that's kind of like Snipes. It's like a really cool basketball brand called BSTN. And we're partnering with them, and they have over 1 million followers in Germany. We are not even close to that, but we did a collab post with them and a sweepstakes post with them. And now that is helping our channels grow. And so those type of tools that Instagram has implemented have helped us as a brand continue to grow and shine a light, and collabing with our players or with the NBA or with NBA international accounts. All of those things kind of help reach new audiences.
Yeah, and you're kind of leading into my next question perfectly here, which is like you're talking about monetization and collaboration. Like, so in terms of how you're measuring this, and in terms of dollars spent to effectiveness, whether that's followers or likes or engagement, how are you measuring this right now? Like, how do you
Yep.
prove out your budget to your CFO, if you will?
Yeah, a tough combo. This is a chicken and egg conversation that we're constantly having. And I think that we have finally reached the point where we understand we have to spend dollars against this to grow the fan base before we're going to have companies invest in us as a brand in those markets. And so that's really where we are. We're not overspending by any means. We're trying to do this as efficiently and effectively as we possibly can. But our key metrics today, we have a revenue goal over the next 3 to 5 years that we need to reach for international marketing partnerships. So that is kind of the goal we're all reaching for. That doesn't mean that those dollars have to come in year one. It is a long-term strategy play. And if you talk to a lot of brands who have tried to grow internationally and are growing internationally, many of them will say this is a 5 to 10 year play, and you have to invest. And so that's kind of the long-term vision, is how do we get to that revenue goal number? To get there, where we are today with KPIs and how we're focusing is really around follower and engagement growth. We know that we can sell against followers in those markets. So if those markets see that in Germany, we're at 100,000 followers, that is valuable to a German-based company who maybe is also looking to do business in the States, right? So giving them assets that are both in Germany, but also using our IP in the States as well for that brand to grow. So those are kind of where we're at today, is really follower growth, engagements on all those social channels. How can we show fandom? And then we have a ton of other metrics around league pass viewership, how many people have downloaded our app, how many people from those countries are visiting our website. We have an entire international dashboard that really pulls all those numbers together for us so that we are seeing growth. I mean, that's the biggest thing too, is where were we a year ago when we really intentionally started this fan growth, and where are we 12 months from now? And are we showing that growth at a 10 to 20% clip is really the goal that we're after right now.
Got it. And kind of supplementing the idea of social media here, I assume there are other technologies that you leverage right now to either keep yourself accountable on the advertising budgets, or whether that's how you're reaching certain demographics. So in addition to social media, like what other technologies are you looking into right now to support kind of that 5 to 10 year goal from a revenue standpoint?
Absolutely. And, I think the biggest tools that we're using right now, and I would assume most people on this call are having this issue, is around data and data management, specifically when we start to getting into other countries and much more stringent regulation around data than we have today. So a lot of the tools that we're working on are our data warehouse. How are we gaining first party data? How are we managing that data well? And then how are we putting those people into a communication funnel that we're able to communicate, keep people engaged if they have agreed to give us their data and their information. And so really it's around first party data tools and managing that data. That's really the first step in growing this fan base and making sure that we're communicating well to them. And then the next one is something that we haven't figured out yet. We really are looking at, we know that about 98% of Orlando Magic fans will never come into the Kia Center and see a game live. How do we engage those fans outside of the building? What sort of membership platform might we roll out that they can be a part of? How can we do a better job of communicating to those fans? How can we make them feel a part of the Orlando Magic fan base, even if they're never actually in the building to see a game live? And so those are tools we're trying to figure out and trying to look for so that we can do a better job of really cultivating that fan, getting them excited and keeping them on board. I think a lot of European soccer teams have done a really good job of this. It's just now, how do we take some of those key learnings from them and implement something globally that might work for us?
Yeah, and I actually have a friend who's part of the Manchester United fan club in, I believe it's northeastern India. So
See,
how
this is
did
what
they
I'm
do
saying. This
that?
is what we need.
Exactly. Exactly. I'll link you two up. And just to kind of close this out, and then we'll have a couple minutes for questions. I know we're running a little bit over, so thank you for everyone that's kind of staying on here. You've really given us a lot of best practices that can kind of translate to venue operators and marketing departments. But if you were to say, like, I'm kind of a blank slate, I need 1 to 2 things as a starting point for me to even look at this as an opportunity, what are those 1 to 2 things that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's creating, what is that vision that you're trying to establish for your brand? We know that we want to be a local brand that's loved globally. So how are we going to get there in that vision? And so it's finding what is that North Star as a brand that you're trying to establish, and then putting in the effort to get there. And it's like, we have a really hard time here doing this, but we try. Is whatever that initiative that's coming to the table that we might have the opportunity to do, does it fit with that North Star goal? If it doesn't, we probably shouldn't be doing it. It's not to say that always works out, but that is kind of the mentality that we're trying to adopt, is really keeping track on what is that North Star vision.
Got it. No, really appreciate Shelly. And so I think we have time for like 1 to 2 questions. We got 4 in here, so I'll kind of sift through these because I think a couple of them have already been answered. The first one I think is a good one is, how are you cultivating long-term loyalty with your international fan base? You're talking about the initial touch points, but in
Yep.
terms of staying power, what does that take?
Yeah, and I think in a lot of places it's going to take showing up. And so that's where we have started to work through, for instance, Germany. We're going to Germany to do a watch party there with another local company. Same thing in Brazil. We're going to go in March, host a watch party. Germany, we're trying to play a game there. Brazil, we played a game there 10 years ago. We're trying to get another one there in a year or so. I think finding those connection points is really going to be key. And then, to my point earlier, the loyalty membership platform is really where we're trying to bring this. So how do we get people engaged and to stay engaged through some sort of loyalty program and some sort of membership platform?
Got it. No, and I remember you saying that. That's a great point. And then the last question I'll take here, because the other two have kind of been answered already. So what advice would you give to other teams looking to expand internationally, especially those that may not have the same resources as a high-profile franchise like the Orlando Magic?
I would say start small. That's like the biggest piece of advice that we've been given, is that we are targeting 3 markets, and the NBA even is like 3 markets is a lot. They would say target one market, try to go deep in a market that makes sense. So the way we decided on the markets we decided on was we worked with a third-party agency called Navigate, and they really went and did the international research. Where are commercial opportunities? Like, where is business happening? Where is the economy capable of supporting major league sponsorships? What is the fan base today for the NBA and for the Orlando Magic? And where do those 2 things cross section? And so we actually have a list of about 10 countries that we could have the opportunity to go after. And then we really narrowed down on what makes sense for our brand. And that's how we landed on the 3 countries that we've landed on today. But so my biggest piece of advice is figure that out. What is the one country that would make sense for your brand or your team to go deep in? Use that as a case study, start the effort, talk to people in the market, and then you just have to start. That's kind of where we've landed. Is everyone's like, should we be doing this watch party over the holidays in December? I'm like, yeah, we got to start somewhere. So let's start, and then we'll learn, and then we'll iterate, and we'll go at it again. So start by finding out what is that one place that makes sense for you to grow.
Awesome. And I know we're 5 minutes over, but those were great questions. And thank you for those responses, Shelly. Thanks to everyone that joined today. I know we ran 5 minutes over, but I really enjoyed this conversation. It was a lot of fun, Shelly. And I
Thanks
look
for
forward to
having
staying in
me.
touch. Of course. All right. Take care. Have a
All
good
right,
day,
bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.